My name is John Pasfield, and the title of this reading will be John and Mother Goose Video 13, The Cow Who Jumped Over the Moon. Here is my novella, John and Mother Goose, The Carnival of Tales. John and Mother Goose strolling the midway. There they are. I almost said it center stage again. I keep thinking that, but they're strolling the midway, and they're surrounded by the mythicals, I call them, the characters who people the nursery rhymes. While driving his granddaughter home from daycare, John suddenly finds himself standing in the midway of a carnival of Mother Goose fairy tales. He's greeted by Jack, of Jack and Jill fame, who tells John that Mother Goose is expecting him, as she has a role for him to play. But what does Mother Goose want? And why does she think that John is a writer of detective stories? And why, when she meets John, does she greet him as almost a long-lost son? And for that matter, why do so many of the fairy tale characters have different stories that they want John to write for them instead of the ones in which they have lived for hundreds of years? John is not a mythical creature. He's only human after all. But can he save the Mother Goose Carnival? Can he solve the mystery of the vanishing fairy tales? Now, even though John is surprised that Mother Goose believes him to be a writer of detective novels, which he is not, he goes along with Mother Goose to the point where he strolls to midway and watches the fairy tale characters put on their plays. In Chapter 6, he's strolling to midway with Jack, of Jack and Jill fame, and at a certain point they stop and watch the presentation of the nursery rhyme of the cow who jumped over the moon. So here is the nursery rhyme. Hey, diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see such sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon. So let's have a look at Chapter 6. First, we'll have a look at the performance of the cow who jumped over the moon. So, Chapter 6, page 38. Here we are. So John and Jack are strolling the midway. They stop and watch a play, a performance. Jack and I continue our walk. The faded sign says, hey, diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. I stop walking. Excuse me, I'll just clear my throat here. I stop walking and motion to Jack as he expounds. I'm curious to see how the story is going to be staged. Two stagehands come out on stage carrying what looks like a small bridge, or perhaps a ramp. It covers a good part of the stage as they set the bridge, or the ramp, down and go back inside. Another stagehand comes out with a cutout of a moon. He places the moon on the stage beneath the highest point of the bridge, or perhaps the ramp. Okay, we're looking for the next section here. Here it is. A young lady dressed in a tutu leads a cow out on stage. She tugs the rope which is attached to the cow's nose, and the cow follows her to one end of the bridge, or ramp. The young lady then leads the cow up over the ramp, above the moon, and down the other side. Okay, just flipping the page here. I applaud the performance, but Jack has his hands in his pockets waiting for me to stop applauding so he can talk. The young lady in the tutu holds the rope which is attached to the cow. She curtsies as an elderly gentleman calls out, "Encore!" And that's the performance then on stage at the Mother Goose Carnival of Tales of the cow who jumped over the moon. Now, Jack introduces John to the cow. They go back to the character tent where John is supposed to interview her concerning whatever evidence she might have, whatever she might have noticed about the disappearance of some of these nursery rhyme characters. Mother Goose is noticing that every day another one of her stages is bare. Where are these nursery rhyme characters going? So that's John's role. But as they sit down, the cow has other ideas. So let's have a look then. This is chapter 6, page 37. Okay? Here's Neil Armstrong on the moon, John. The cow is showing me. See the footprints? Excuse me, I'm clearing my throat again. Excuse me. I'll start again. Here's Neil Armstrong on the moon, John. The cow is showing me. See the footprints? See the flag? Now what do you think? What do you think about the landing on the moon? We're sitting in a character tent at the end of the working day. Look, it's not that it didn't happen, John. That isn't my concern. It's just that this whole Neil Armstrong thing bothers me no end. I'd like you to get the facts straight once and for all. You're an educated man, John. You know your nursery rhymes. You know that was me. That was I who jumped over the moon. Know how long ago I did so. Do a little research and you'll see. Of course, my history has been recorded, John. People couldn't deny the truth, but I was relegated to footnotes, Tenzing Norgay, and all of that. All the major historians tried to bury me. It's the people, John, mainly the children, who have kept my story alive by chanting as they play the nursery rhymes. From time immemorial, whenever they thought of the moon, the common people have always thought, you see, of me. But not the great historians, Suetonius, Macaulay, Tilliard, ancient Pliny, and writers like that. Every animal knew that our history was being denied. I'm a fact of history, John. I go back to the days when the moon was made of green cheese. Of course, I knew it wasn't, as I'd been there, John, long before any human being that you could name. But people are sensitive, John, backwards, fearful, to the ancient beliefs they always cling so hard. If I'd come back to Earth and told what the moon is really made of, John, that it isn't made of green cheese, well, you know what would have happened? You familiar with history, John? How much of it do you know? Have you heard of the Inquisition? Do you know that term? They would have skinned me alive, John, roasted me on a spit. I'm a cow, after all, John. If they were burning people at the stake, what compunctions do you think they would have had about burning me? I kept my secrets, John, but imagine my chagrin when some of these humans invented such devices as a telescope. They became celebrated as great scientists, Galileo and people like that, and all they told about was things that I'd known for years. If I'd have been human with only 2 legs, I would have been famous all over the world. My story would have been a great inspiration to all humankind. But, as it was, my story was stifled, relegated to children's books. No ticker tape parades and things like that. I was never given my due. John, there was no one to speak for me. In those days, there was no such thing as animal rights. Okay, that's part 1. We'll move to part 2 of the cow telling John about jumping over the moon. The cow's telling me her story. We are sitting in the tent. Her stance in the chair is so ungainly that hard to believe she jumped right over the moon. So here's how I see it, John. Here's what I want you to write for me. Maybe I'll take off from the Kennedy Space Center, or maybe from Kitty Hawk, or maybe from that place in Canada where Lindbergh flew. And I'll jump over the moon, of course, on my way to the furthest stars. A little nostalgia on which the commentators can chew. A circle I'll make around Mars, too, John. See me looking down from on high? That's about as far as human space probes have managed to go. But I'll keep on going, John, millions and millions of miles from there. See the determined look on my face? I'll go right out to the edge of whatever there is, far on past where our strongest telescopes can spy. And I'll figure out just exactly what's going on. Just like I settled the question about green cheese. Is it a loop or is it a sphere? Does it even have an ending? When you get to the end, if there is one, can you see the Big Bang? Or can you see God's fingers paddling in the clay? It'll be me, John, not Neil Armstrong, nor any human astronaut that figures the space thing out, that explores and explains the universe, the secret at the core, and brings it back for everyone to know. Never mind Superman or Spider-Man. Every child will want to be me. Every child will know the name of this illustrious cow. Okay, then we go to the next section, in which the cow talks about jumping over the moon. So, here I am returning to Earth, John. See me trotting down the landing strip? Not like these humans, when they return from space. I don't need a rocket ship. I don't need to splash down in the ocean. I don't need a cruiser or destroyer to fish me out of the drink. I simply come down to land on my own 4 feet. So, here's the ticker tape parade on Fifth Avenue. All the humans go crazy acknowledging my feat. We're a minority group, John, the other animals and me, even though we outnumber the humans on the earth. Suddenly, we're noticed due to the attention that I have accrued, accolades and recognition, John. An Animal History Month is declared, documentaries on the tube, all the things that animals have done to improve the world. From milk to manure, from ivory to whale oil. Think of the 19th century. Without us, they would have lived in the dark. Contemporary culture, the way we live today, is the animal's gift to humankind. I become an animal activist, an elder, revered quadruped. Maybe a day will be set aside for me. Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, in recognition of an undervalued minority and our contribution to the life of humankind. All I ask is that you'll write the book I offered to you, John. Just ink and paper to you, perhaps, but validation for my people and for me. My future is in your hands, John. I can be so much more than a cow who jumped over the moon. John hears a line in his head. Hey, diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. You wouldn't believe my workload here, John. Sure, there are rules, but the inspectors never come round. I have to double as the cow in Little Boy Blue. I don't even get to act. I just stand and twiddle my thumbs in a field of corn. It's the indignity, John. The indignity. This is my tale, John, my own life story. I'm the one who jumped over the moon. So wouldn't you think that I would get the starring role? But no, John. Not on your life, John. I saw you watching from the crowd. I'm embarrassed every time I walk out on the stage. A girl in a tutu leads me around with a rope in my nose. Okay, well, that's the story that the cow tells John. Now, that's instead of John asking her for clues or evidence about why the fairy tales are disappearing from the Mother Goose Carnival of Tales. Here's a note. And that's the story. Excuse me, I have to keep clearing my throat. And that's the story of the cow who jumped over the moon, as told by the cow herself to John, who was a visitor at the Mother Goose Carnival of Tales. So just how exactly does literature work? Well, it seems to me that it works in 2 basic ways. One of the ways in which literature works is that it tells a story in prose. It tells a story in literal detail. So it seems to me that I could have picked any one of the many minority groups which are now asking for, or even demanding, recognition for the contributions that they have made to the progress of humankind through all the centuries to which our ancestors have lived. If so, if this book were written in this way, as a prose narrative, then it would be the story of a particular minority group and what that group has done as a contribution to the human enterprise. But the other way in which literature works is to tell a story in imagery. Now, imagery And one of the simplest manifestations is the language of equivalency. Sometimes a writer wants to write about something for which there is no literal detail. If a writer, for instance, wants to write about different ways of looking at reality, about the ways in which our minds respond to the everyday world in which we live, that writer might write a fantasy novel, such as Alice in Wonderland, in which a human character encounters all kinds of strange creatures. In this kind of novel, the strange non-human creatures are examples of what I would call equivalency imagery. The strange creatures represent new and different apprehensions about everyday reality. Another reason for a writer to employ imagery is in order to avoid limiting a story to one specific group of humans in one specific society in one specific time in the human experience. This is the kind of imagery by which this story is being presented. Excuse me again. So in this particular chapter, what or who does the cow represent? What will the reader of this particular chapter assume the imagery of the cow in her life experience to be an equivalency for? Well, I have no doubt that many people reading this book within the next few years, within the next decade or so, will assume that it's about the minority groups who, in the year 2024, in which I'm reading this chapter, or in the decade of the 2020s, or in the first quarter or third or half of the 21st century. However, if the book lasts, as I hope it will, through a century or two of reading, the book will still be valid because the imagery of the cow and her life experience will invite thoughts of other minority groups who in their turn have been denigrated, shortchanged, undervalued concerning their contribution to the story of humankind. I have nothing against prose novels. I enjoy reading them, but I put them in the category of sociology books or history books, as they are about one specific set of characters, or one specific group of people, or one specific society in a particular time and a particular place. What I prefer, and what I think the best of literature has always been, is the literature of imagery. This includes poetry, poetic plays, and poetic novels. It is the literature of imagery which has something to say about all human beings, and therefore has something to say to all human beings, to all individuals, and to all societies in all times. This is why Alice in Wonderland, which was written in 1865, well over 100 years ago, is still being read and is still relevant today. So, this is my novella, John and Mother Goose, The Carnival of Tales. It's found on Amazon, where there's more information. It's found at Rocks Mills Press, which is my publisher's website, and at johnpassfield.ca, which is my website. There are 2 free books. If you just click on the cover icon, you'll get to read them for free. The planning notebook in which I planned and wrote this novella, and the journal in which I reflected on all the topics that I could think of as I was polishing that novella. So if you're interested, have a look at johnpassfield.ca. Lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.